Chapter 23 Shadow Goes to Sea. Delilah, it turned out, was full of surprises. We went to see Dr. Perry the very next day. "Isn't she sweet?" my vet said, after the merest glance. "She'll make a nice pair with Shadow. How does he feel about the new family member?" I wasn't prepared for that, which was foolish. Dr. Perry had adored Shadow. Of course, she would ask. "Shadow isn't with me anymore," I said. "Not with you?" She took my hand. "Did Animal Control make a fuss? I faxed all of his papers and left voicemail for the investigating officer. All his shots were up to date. I'll call them." "It's not that," I said. "He ran off." "I don't believe it. He was so attached to you." I felt tears welling. Yes, it must have been something compelling him to take him away. You've put up signs?" I bobbed my head in a way I hoped she would take for assent. "He was wearing his SPCA tags, so maybe he'll come back to me that way. I'm hopeful," I said, but I wasn't very. "So this is Delilah. I found her in the park. I know it can be difficult to take in feral cats, but she's young enough to make the change," Dr. Perry said, stroking Delilah's side. A few minutes later, I got the news. "She's in good health," Dr. Perry said. But are you ready for multiple cats?" "Oh, God, no," I said. "Just this one." Dr. Perry smiled. "Just this one will soon be 3 or 4. She's expecting kittens." Being pregnant didn't seem to slow Delilah down. Apparently, used to wide open spaces, she found a way to dash around the perimeter of the apartment without losing speed. She did it regularly. She also played with everything in sight, from shoelaces to drape pulls. I soon adored her. Of course, she would never replace Shadow. Ours was a special relationship, and as a week passed, then more, with no word from him, I found myself in a state of anxious expectation. I'd wake up with my teeth clenched. I didn't feel much like eating. I'd jump when the phone rang. It was almost as if I could hear the ticking of a bomb or the rat-tat-tat of drums before the platform drops out from below the condemned man, before the order given to fire. In short, I began to expect trouble. But when the call finally came, I thought it was a telemarketer calling back, so I didn't hesitate with my hand over the receiver. Didn't feel my heart pound. Didn't cross myself or my fingers. "This is San Francisco Animal Care and Control," the gender and emotion-free voice intoned. "I'm calling about Shadow." I was speechless. "I have a red leather collar here with a tag that reads, 'My name is Shadow. If you find me, please call 415-752-7194. Aren't they supposed to change out phone numbers? Huh. I tried to swallow. "There's also an SPCA identification tag. Their records for this number are for a gray and white striped tabby named Irving, who was adopted by one Alice Franklin on October 28, 1998. Is that you?" "Yes," I said. "I'm Alice." "Then please come to Animal Control within the next 24 hours to identify your cat," the voice said. "We're at 1200 15th Street, Cross Street, Harrison. Do you need directions?" "I used to work at the SPCA," I said, and the voice hung up. I was beside myself with excitement. He'd come back to me after all, with a little help from the collar I insisted he wear. I couldn't wait to see him. I grabbed a jacket and tore downstairs. Mimi and her driver were waiting outside the gate. "I heard the news," she said. "I thought you might want company." I don't know what puzzled me more, that she had found out, did the SPCA also list next of kin on its forms, or that her mood wasn't at all the same delighted register as mine. And then, of course, I realized that the voice had said nothing about whether Shadow was dead or alive, only that they had him. Mimi squeezed my hand. We rode the rest of the way in silence. Animal Control is tucked into a corner of the city most residents rarely see. Perhaps the best thing that can be said about it is that there's usually plenty of parking in the area. It's full of warehouses, and there's quite a large strip along the warehouses that's available for cars and trucks. The ground is covered with grit, and it gives an unpleasant sensation as it slides between your toes and the macadam, kind of like chalk squeaking on blackboard, but silent. During the year or two I volunteered with the SPCA, I had come here several times to look for pets that seemed like good candidates for adoption. In San Francisco, animal control is the primary animal retrieval agency. If a dog or cat is found wandering the street, or injured, or dead for that matter, it was brought to animal control first. On the second floor, off a long, narrow corridor, there's a room full of cages that holds wayward pets. But that was not where we found Shadow. He was at the end of the darkened hallway beyond a door marked "Only authorized personnel may enter here," in a small examining room. By the time we reached it, I had a good idea of what I would find. But there was always hope. Dr. Amy Brightheart, a veterinarian who seemed to remember me, met us in the room. "Alice, how are you?" I raised my eyebrows. "Is he okay?" Dr. Breitbart held the door for us to enter. Now that's a question I always find difficult to answer, you know. It seems to me that it's a matter of metaphysics, not medicine, and of course, I'm a DVM, not a PhD. The tile and the linoleum in the room were a sickly off-white color, like an examining room at the vet's office. Okay. This one had a stainless steel examining table, about 3 feet long and 18 inches wide. Usually, I put Shadow's carrier at the far end of the wall and open the door so he can get out when he's ready. Usually, he stays inside until the vet pulls him out to poke and prod. Usually, he talks to me. Well, complains would be a better word. He wasn't complaining now. He was lying on his side in the middle of the table. He was very still. Oh, I suppose I saw the truth of it right away, but at first, my eyes didn't want to take it all in. "He's lost some patches of fur," I said, using my middle finger to stroke the base of his neck. There was something dried and brown caught on the white whiskers deep inside the milky curls of his ear. I rubbed the pad of his front paw. 2 of his nails appeared to have broken off, and then my eyes were drawn to the telling detail. His tongue, still as pink as it had been in life, lolled between his teeth, curled back against a fang. He was dead then. Suddenly I realized that I was the meat in a body sandwich. Mimi and Dr. Brightheart on either side, their arms intertwined around my back. "How did it happen?" I asked. "A car crossing Market Street. The driver was really upset. It wasn't her fault." I nodded. "He was dead when he got here," she said. "He probably died instantly. He didn't suffer." Okay, but you can't know that if you used "probably" in the last... God. Oh, but he had, I thought, and much of it because of me. "Do you want the remains?" Before I could respond, Mimi stepped forward. "Of course," she said. "We want to return his body to its natural order that gave it life." But Dr. Brightheart explained that they did cremations once or twice a week. They would call us when the ashes were ready, she said. "We'll wait," Mimi said. "I'd like to take my brother with us today. If we hurry, the ceremony can be done at sunset, an auspicious time for entry into the next plane of existence." I saw Dr. Brightheart's annoyance, the no in her face, and then she seemed to understand who she was talking to. "Of course," she said at last. "We'll need a half hour. The remains will be downstairs in the front office." Not the remains," Mimi said, rather sharply. "I imagine you have quite a few remains lying around here. Please be sure the remains you give us belong to Shadow." She patted his rump. "A cat are one of the feline first families. Now it's the end of his 9th life." "We always," Dr. Breitbart began. "Yes, I'm sure you always do," Mimi said, though her voice was full of skepticism. "In this case, However, you should be aware that our know if the remains don't belong to my brother and our what do you people say? Our have a hissy fit. Dr. Brightheart's mouth was hanging open unattractively. Come along, Alice. Oh, come along, Alice. Pedro will get us some coffee. A half hour later, I was riding toward Fort Point on San Francisco Bay, holding a small plastic tub, similar to the ones that phony whipped cream cans come in. A piece of adhesive tape had been stretched across the top, holding down the lid. Ink in a peculiar blue-green color told us that the tub contained remains of Shadow, 6-year-old male Maine Coon cat belonging to Alice Franklin, 415-752-7194, deceased by accident, 05/25/2004. Okay, so we have a date. Okay, so we know that all of this takes place in 2004. So I guess all of the weird shit with technology and whatnot, that makes sense. Okay, because 04 stood in a different space than 08. Okay. People know Fort Point from a surreal scene in the film Vertigo, a windowless brick building, an empty parking lot, the orange of the bridge looming overhead. Kim Novak jumps into the bay and Jimmy Stewart saves her. An improbable rescue. People who know these waters will tell you. The spot where she jumped in is notoriously treacherous. But the biggest lie in the movie is the emptiness. Fort Point is always busy. Cars pulling in and out, bearing tourists and locals, people running, walking, biking, surfing by. We got out near a set of fishing piers that angle out into the bay, perhaps 50 or 60 yards, and walked out on one of them. The view was spectacular. Dead ahead, across the bay, was Fort Baker. Maybe dead shouldn't be used there if it's Alice that's describing this. I don't think that's a word she would use to describe the situation. Hiding from the bend of Sausalito. As you turned right, your eye passed Angel Island and Alcatraz. Then the city's modest skyscrapers rose in the distance. And when you turned back, the Golden Gate Bridge filled your eyes. It seemed as though the air itself, not just the sky, was golden as the unseen sun sank toward the horizon. I knew the earth. I knew the earth spirits would favor him, Mimi said. Look, there's a river. Excuse me, I said. What earth spirits? This is San Francisco Bay. Yes, of course. The bay, she said. But look there. See how the current is making a river that runs out to sea? The gods only rarely send such things. Passing under our end of the pier and extending as far as I could see, a stretch of choppy water, perhaps 30 feet wide, did indeed appear to be flowing through the bay, along the tide, heading for the bridge, the passage of cliffs that is the real Golden Gate, and the open sea beyond. Here have the hero's end he deserves, she said, touching the plastic container that held all of what was left of Shadow. I never had a ceremony for you, I said, remembering another small plastic bin. Those were just some generic cat ashes the vet gave you, she said. I wouldn't be surprised if there was even dog in it. I must have looked upset. It's all right. You're a sweet woman. You never expect people to behave badly. I wondered if that was true. I rubbed my hand around the edge of the lid. I suppose we should say something, I said. Like a proper funeral. It's almost sunset. Oh, it's almost sunset. Why do we need words? She said, then seeing my face. If you like. I took a deep breath. We're gathered here today to say goodbye to Shadow, my favorite male cat. He was a joy to me always. He never scratched the good rugs. He never peed outside the box. Most of the time, he even came when I called. And at the end of his life, he became a man. the man of my dreams, the only man I have ever truly loved, and the man who loved me best. The world will never be the same without him. I nodded to her. She looked a bit exasperated, but she settled her face in a solemn expression and spoke. Shadow was an honor to his family, and a hero to Feline world. He loved his people well, and if he was sometimes too curious, even for a cat, he did what was right. In the end, he obeyed the gods. She looked at me, wondering if that was enough. I nodded. It was time, I knew, to remove the lid of the container and pour Shadow's ashes into the sea. But I couldn't do it. I handed the container to Mimi and winced when a click told me the lid had come free. Then a rainbow of small particles arced out from her hand and fell into the sea. You could see the particles in the waves for a while as they rushed towards the bridge. It was done. God go with him, I said, and keep him safe. Yes, she said. The most dangerous part is only beginning.